Hello, hello. Welcome to At Home with the Intuitive Cook, the podcast giving a voice to everyday home cooks like you and me. Join me around the kitchen table as we chat about finding cooking ease and inspiration beyond rules and recipes and the noise of celebrity chef culture. It's not rocket science, it's just dinner. Hello and welcome. You are at home with me, Katerina Pavlakis, and my guest today is Caroline Poole. Caroline has lived in many countries around the world, and she's a life coach for women looking to find more joy and excitement in their life. We've known each other for a while now through various online happenings, and she's always struck me as someone who is superbly calm and grounded. Our conversation today also reveals a big passion for good food and the simple pleasures in life. Come join us around the kitchen table for this down-to-earth, practical and delicious conversation. Hello, Caroline. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Katerina. Good to be here.
That's great to have you. And full disclosure, this is our second conversation because our conversation last week, I did not press the correct record button. So this is our second conversation, but I'm sure it's going to be just as fascinating as the first one because you have a lot to say about cooking, as everybody does.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I find with this podcast, that everybody who is in the kitchen and cooks meals has a lot to say about cooking, even if you don't think so. So this is what this podcast is all about, really, talking to people like you and me who just cook their everyday meals for their family. So what are you cooking today?
Right. Well, tonight, again, we have a busy day today. So tonight it's going to be a tray bake. So I have some vegetables in the fridge. I have some potatoes from yesterday evening, which are already boiled. So that's all going to go into the oven with a bit of olive oil and some seasoning. And then I might just, buy a piece of fish or a chicken and then add that to the frying pan, and then that will be dinner tonight. So very, very simple, but good.
Delicious, yeah. I love tray bakes myself. I think the baking kind of brings out the flavor, the roasting.
Yeah,
Because
it does.
it slightly dehydrates things, as opposed to cooking things in a pan with liquid. So I think that really makes flavors more intense.
Yeah, it gets a depth to it, which I like a lot. And I don't know, somehow I find also with children, just to do something different helps. They don't want to see the same things on their plate all the time, or at least mine don't. So just doing something different with the vegetables, preparing it in a slightly different way, just really is great, and a great way to keep them enthusiastic about having dinner.
Yeah, and having dinner really is a great time for the family coming together, isn't it? And I think you've said before that this is really important to you.
Yes, yeah, dinner for us is really a time in the day that we cling on to really sit together and take some time to eat, of course. The food is, let's say, the first main reason to come together, to sit around the table. But it's really also about just checking in with one another, finding out how our days have been, sharing what's been happening in our lives, and just to really have that moment to connect and to, it's a social thing for us. It's really a social thing, a family moment. So we hold on to that quite dearly, even if life gets busy.
And this is so much, connected to food. Food isn't just about eating. Food is also about sharing. And I think this is maybe something that tends to get lost in our sort of rushed, busy 21st century culture, that we kind of just eat to survive, and that kind of involves often shoving something in because we're hungry rather than take the time to share the meal, which then comes with, take the time to prepare the meal, right?
Yeah, it's both. Yeah. And like you say, it's very much about taking that pause in the day. So it's time to socialize, but also just a moment to take a break from your day, do something completely different, focus on something completely different or somebody completely different that you've been focusing on all day. So it's also just, a way of relaxing, kind of stepping away from everything that's been going on and, having a listen and kind of taking that pause. And for me, you're right. I mean, the cooking, it starts with the cooking for me. I think for my children, if they're not helping me out that day, then it starts once they get to the table. But for me, it already starts the moment I start stepping into the kitchen, taking out my food and getting ready to prepare it.
So yeah, this really is about connection with those we share the meal, but also
Yeah.
connecting with ourselves in that moment of when we start cooking. And connection really is also something, connection with ourselves is something that you use a lot in your work as a coach, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I help women reconnect to things that give them joy in life. And I teach them in a way not to look outward for that, but really to connect inward and to look inside themselves and feel into what brings them joy from, I believe very, very deeply that we all know exactly what we need in life if we're just willing to take that pause, take that moment to reconnect with ourselves and listen to that. And yes, yeah, I think cooking is exactly that. It for me it already starts with just kind of briefly tuning into what do I feel like eating today. That's already some kind of little reconnection going on within yourself, right? What do I feel like a fresh summer salad, or do I feel with the rainy weather we're having now a nice warm soup? That's already that simple reconnection to yourself that gives the kind of the springboard towards what are we having for dinner tonight.
And that is really the best place to start, really. What do I fancy in
Yeah.
those broad terms, as you just said? Is it a crunchy salad or a comforting soup? And then
Yeah.
sort of backtrack or reverse engineer from there. Okay, what have I got to make a
Yes.
salad or make a soup?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I also love about cooking, that I could have chicken in the fridge, for instance, but then doing that brief connection to myself. What do I want to do with the chicken? Do I feel like, putting it, preparing it beforehand, preparing it with something acidic like lemon and putting it in a salad, making it very fresh? Or do I want to make it more into, warm curry, creamy thing, which gives us, it's the same chicken, but it gives a completely different experience in terms of taste and textures. And that's what I love, that you can go so many ways with food. There's so much to do with it. Gives lots of flexibility.
Yeah, but that kind of requires that thinking that you just explained, of seeing ingredients as a component that is more flexible and more alive, and you can go this way or that way, rather than this sort of static list of ingredients that many of us believe that this is what recipes are supposed
Yeah,
to be, that if you follow everything exactly, it will look like in the photo, forgetting that cooking and food, your ingredients, they're alive. So they might
exactly.
go this way or that way, yeah.
Yeah, they can go every way. And that's also why, I remember when I first met my husband and we started living together, it was really also getting together in terms of cooking was also, again, a little bit of a challenge, because he was very much like, with chicken we make this recipe and it's accompanied by this and rice and that. He had a list of things. And for me, cooking is completely different. Maybe it's the way I've been taught by my mom, by my parents. It's very much about what do we have in the fridge, what do we feel like today, and just creating from that, and not necessarily sticking to things that how it should be. Let's say recipes that are fixed and done every single time in the same way. And although I do believe, of course, we can learn a lot from recipes, because sometimes there are just great food combinations which are good to learn about and to know about. But I love the flexibility of it, just to take what's there, to take what's in season, and go with the flow, whatever you feel like that day. I think there's so many rules in life already. Let's make the kitchen an easy place.
Yeah, well, you're so right about that. So, how did you learn cooking? What do you remember from? how
Mm.
this attitude of, let's be flexible, how did that kind of percolate into your attitude?
I think that's very much the way my mom also approaches food. She comes from a family also where food was always very important, and even her father, so my grandfather, was very much into food, not necessarily preparing it every evening, but he would be very keen on, oh, the cherries are ripe at the moment. Let's go find the farmer in the neighborhood who has the best cherries. And he would go and try every single farmer and then see, have the whole family test which cherries are the best and then go back to that farmer to get more. So it's a daily thing, right? You're constantly preoccupied, or not preoccupied, but you're occupied with what's in season, where can we get it? Just because it's great taste brings such great pleasure. It's the simple pleasures in life to find those fresh produce and to prepare something nicely and go with it. So I think my mom grew up in that way. So food has also really been always a very important thing for her. And I remember her, when we used to go out for dinner, she would also say, oh, I love going out for dinner just so that I get the break of not having to cook for one evening. But she always reminded us this is, just as good as we could eat at home. It's not necessarily better because you're going out for a meal. It's just the ease, maybe, or the atmosphere of the restaurant, which you like. But the food, you can do that at home too. Yeah, that's kind of the way I've been brought up with food, that it's something you really, everybody can do for themselves, and something you want to be occupied with. Yeah, it brings a lot of variety.
And that is what you now bring to your own family.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Especially also, cooking by the seasons. And I find that really important just because I believe what's in season now is probably what we should be eating. I don't know if that really academically makes any sense, but for my feeling, just eating by the seasons is a really naturally healthy thing to do. And yeah, I find it really important in this day and age when you can get certain fruits and veg all year round, that the children do realize things do come in seasons. And the ones, they're usually the tastiest when you're eating them at the moment that they are ready to be harvested. So that is something I really put focus on at home, to always remind my kids that yes, we are having asparagus now because it is the season for asparagus, or we are having the wild garlic now and it's almost the end of it, so enjoy it while we still have it this year. These little things I find really important.
And this obviously is how people would have cooked in the past. And also, if you are lucky enough to be growing your own vegetables, again, you cook
Yeah.
not by the recipe, you cook by what you have, because
Well,
when your courgettes are ripe, you need to eat them kind of now.
exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and that for me is still a dream, to at one point in time have my own vegetable garden, vegetable patch. We grow a little bit of herbs here in some pots, and we have some tomato plants usually in the summer. But to really, because we move around a lot, we rent a home, so it's a little bit difficult to really put in a full flown vegetable patch in a rented garden. But that's really a dream of mine, to be able to have that. That's lovely.
Yeah, that is the downside of moving around, that these sort of more, long-term projects are not that easy to realize. So yeah,
Yeah.
you have lived in a lot of different countries, haven't you? So
Yeah.
how has that experience of living in a different culture and a different food culture shaped how you cook?
I think that's had a huge impact. So, as a child, I moved with my parents, and then now with my husband as a family, we're also moving around. And I think that's also maybe why I'm so flexible with food in terms of just taking what I have and creating something of it, because I haven't grown up necessarily with, this is how we cook here, a regional way of cooking. And that's always been what I've known. Growing up in Greece, growing up in the States, it was very much each time my mom going out and seeing, what are the local vegetables here? What do people do with it if I don't know what it is, if I've never seen it before? And then learning from that and making it your own. So I think that's kind of what I got as a child, that's just something you do. I remember when we went to the States, it was, I think, the first time we actually saw sweet potatoes, which at that time we had not seen before coming from Europe. And just learning, my mom also didn't know. First you try boiling them because it's a sweet potato, so you make a potato like we know how to make a potato. And then you realize that's not that tasty to do with a sweet potato. So you start listening, or my mom would do that, and you start figuring out what to do with sweet potatoes. So I think that's probably where the flexibility comes from, and just going with the flow of what do you feel like and what can you do with certain vegetables. And now also living in India was a great experience for some years, figuring out, they have a completely different, I'd say, especially the spices there. Their vegetables and things they use are very similar, but just the way they prepare it with their spices has been really a new phase of mine to step into, seeing what you can do with many, many spices. So that was really something new, very exciting.
So how has, for example, using spices changed for you by living in the country of spice?
Yeah. Well, first of all, just the realizing, and that's just by trial and error, that there are certain spices which you maybe add as you're making the base of a dish. So as you add your onions, you will add maybe some cumin seeds and some mustard seeds. Those are very much spices that you put in the base. And then understanding that, for instance, if you put turmeric in too soon and it starts burning, it doesn't really get a good taste. So turmeric is often something that you would add in more at the end when you're finishing off a dish to add some spice. And that's really, as I said, just by, by failing sometimes and having your turmeric burn in your pan and realize that's not so tasty. Just to try and see what how to work with spices. Yeah, and then and it still fascinates me because I just use, what I've become accustomed to. But for instance, there's cardamom, which is a taste that I love. And I'm always still looking for dishes. Like how can I use that even now back in Europe? How can I use my cardamom that I still have in dishes? Because I love that taste. But it's not a spice we use very much here in Europe. At least I haven't really found many dishes with it. So it's just trial and error, trying things out, seeing what tastes good. And I love that. Like I said, cardamom is something that I like a lot. So I'm always looking for what can I do with it? How can I use it to bring that taste into my day? That experience of India with all its spices and just being able to pick up on certain ideas and keep using them has just been an enrichment, I guess, to my cooking experience and taste. So really lovely.
And I think, this, enrichment is a nice word. Trying new things and learning to work with new flavors, new ingredients, whatever it may be, that kind of then takes its place in that mental reference we all
Yeah.
have of flavor in the back of our head. And then that gives us the ideas that come up when we open the fridge and we think, oh, what the heck am I going to cook tonight?
Yeah.
So the more we kind of enrich our library of references with new flavor experiences, whether we like it or not, it could be that we try something that we don't like, and that's good to know too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Just like you need to expose kids to different types of tastes. I think it's really important also as an adult to keep trying things, trying new tastes, trying new combinations, and keeps things exciting and fun, and you keep learning a little bit more about yourself, maybe also what you do and don't like.
So you just mentioned kids there, and getting kids to like new flavors, which I think a lot of parents find really challenging.
Mm,
So how have you done that with your kids? How have you
yeah.
encourage them to be open to trying new things?
Well, I just exactly what you say there, always encouragement. I think taking a very positive view on food as something that's fun and exciting just helps to make it a fun thing at the dinner table. Also, just being very relaxed about it, understanding that children will go through phases where they like things or don't like things, or they don't like the sight of, certain green colors or something like that. So just being, I don't know, trusting in the long term that we all, I think, like to eat. We all like certain tastes in our mouth. And just trusting that, kids will pick up on that. They also really love taste. You could see that when you give them their first fruit bites. They love the sweetness of it, right? So it's just going with the flow and offering them the things they like, and also to keep offering them the things that they're maybe not quite ready for, but just to expose it to them and just making it a fun experience. We, as I said, for us, it's really important that we sit down for our dinners and just having fun at the dinner table, not only putting the focus on, you have to clear your plate, but also let's talk, let's have some fun. And so not only putting the focus on food, but also putting the focus on connecting with one another and having that be just as important, I think is a probably an important part of what helped for my kids. Yeah. And what also helps, which I really like, is I find that children, they're so playful. They're naturally interested in also in the cooking part. So when I'm cooking, and from a very young age, they would want to help out, whether it's just with cutting the little end parts of the beans that we're having, or learning to boil or fry an egg in the pan for breakfast in the morning. Just these little things are really nice to do together. Baking, for instance, with my daughter, I do a lot. She's completely into baking at the moment. And we just have fun with it. If she comes up with combinations of taste she wants to try, we just give it a try, even though I might be thinking, well, not so sure about that. But just let her have some space and fun in the kitchen with it and see what happens. So bringing in that playful flow, I think, helps a lot for children to get them interested. And I find whatever they've put effort into themselves to prepare, they generally like to eat it afterwards just because they've done all the work for it. So I think that really helps to get them engaged.
And tell me about the green fries.
Yeah, green fries. That came up quite early. That's the playfulness comes through there, right? So when we were having haricot or the green beans, my kids, of course, at a certain age would look at it like, "Ugh, you put something green on my plate. I'm not eating that." And I used to say, "Hey, we're having green fries tonight," and I would make a nice mayonnaise with it, and they're allowed to eat it with their hands, just as they would fries, and that somehow changed the whole experience of eating green beans for them. So even to this day, and they're much older now and know much more, but even to this day, we talk about having green fries this evening instead of just beans.
I love that story. That's a great story about, yeah, about being playful and resourceful in order to make it easy for kids to have a positive experience
Yeah,
with their
exactly.
dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think just going with the flow with kids, having them try things, not making too much of a fuss if they don't want to eat something for a little bit, just trusting that at one point, if you keep offering it, they will try, they will eat. I think that's, going with the flow. That's the best thing, I think.
So what are your go-to meals when you don't feel like cooking, when you can't be bothered to cook?
I think the tray bake, as we're having tonight, is definitely a go-to. I find that very easy. You add in anything you have in the fridge in terms of vegetables, onions, some garlic. You put it in the oven with some olive oil and salt, pepper, and fresh herbs, and you just have a really tasty main part of your meal already. You add some rice and potatoes, and you're done. What else? I love soups. Soup is always a go-to of mine, especially also with the children. I find it very, very easy just to always have soup around that when they get home from school and they're hungry, and I still need, let's say, 40 minutes to really get some dinner on the table. That just buys me that time where they're ravished and really need something right now. And in that way, I mean, talking about appliances, I love my soup maker, which is just this big can thing, and I pop in all my vegetables and some water and salt and herbs, and then it starts boiling and mixing everything together. And I can walk away in the meantime while it's doing its thing for 30 minutes. I can go get the kids, and by the time we're home, then there's some fresh soup to be had. So those are the kinds of things that make life easy, and you're still eating fresh and healthy, which I love that. That's like it gives me a great kick each time I can pour it out. It's like yay.
Yeah, I also get a kick out of my slow cooker in a similar way that I throw it in the morning, I throw the
Yeah,
stuff in, and then in the evening there is just a meal ready.
yeah,
And
that's lovely.
and it usually, lasts us a couple of days too, because it's a big pot of stew, and it's just two of us here, so that usually
Yeah.
lasts us a while. But yeah, it's such a simple, like a soup maker. It's a really simple appliance. It's the way that it's insulated, and it has a timer basically, so you can walk away.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because many friends always say when I'm going on about my soup maker, like, "Yeah, but Caroline, soup making soup is so simple." And it is, right? You can do it so simply in a pan or in a pot. But for me, it's just the ease of putting it all in, getting it ready, and it will do its thing. That makes it just the it gives it the extra kick where I feel, yay, I could just do something else in the meantime and not have to stand by that pot and watch over it. So that's really easy. And as you said that, Katerina, with your slow cooker and the stew, I'm also a great fan of leftovers. I just love making quite a bit more than I know we'll be eating that evening, just because the ease of leftovers is so wonderful. I love it when I have something already in the fridge, talking about ease throughout the week when the kids are busy with sports and coming in and out, just to be able to get something out of the fridge, warm it up, or use it as part of what I'm making for that evening already is just so good. So I'm a huge fan of keeping leftovers as much as possible.
So, what's your favorite way with leftovers?
Well, it depends a bit on what it is, but for instance, if I have, for instance, tonight, if there are leftovers from the tray bake, I will keep those. And often the next day, I will chop an onion, put that in the pan, and then add the veggies or anything from the tray bake, add some tomato sauce, and then there's like a simple pasta sauce that we can have with pasta tomorrow. So yeah, it's really it can go so many ways with
Mm.
leftovers. I love it. It makes life easy.
And it's that repurposing really, which, like you just said, for me, it often just looks that way. I just chuck the leftovers in the next meal, and it just
Yeah.
adds some flavor, some texture,
Yes.
and I think a lot of people find leftovers boring because, if you eat the same thing several days in a row, it is, of course, boring. But if you repurpose or upcycle your
Yeah.
leftovers in that way into a new dish, you're actually not eating the same thing, even though you are eating leftovers.
No, exactly. It comes something completely different. And I also like them a lot, just even if I'm not using them for dinner, but just for myself. Usually during the day, I'm home alone, and just to have a healthy, quick lunch, I will, you know, get some fresh salad out. If I have some chicken left over from the night before or the tray bake vegetables, I add those cold to my salad, and it just lifts your salad. It's something different. There's some different tastes going on there. And I feel good because I've had a healthy lunch. So yeah, just goes so many ways. It's so easy and flexible. Love it.
And now, my kitchen friends, it's time for a quick break to see what I've been cooking up for you. If you ever feel trapped by recipes or wish you could get more creative in your kitchen, I made a free mini course. It's called Ditch the Recipes, and it's a short series of 5 emails that will help you get started on your intuitive cooking journey. Sign up on the website at theintuitivecook.co.uk/free or find the link in the show notes. And now, let's get back to our conversation. And what is your favorite thing to eat?
My favorite thing. Oh, gosh, that's a difficult question because I have so many things that I love. Maybe if I stick to the moment, I guess it's the fresh asparagus that we're having. I love that. It also brings back lots of happy memories because it's coming up to my birthday now, and I remember for my birthday I would often ask to eat asparagus. So it's just this association, which is really lovely. Yeah, I love just the freshness of them and then combining them with the eggs and ham and a butter sauce and fresh potatoes. Just lovely. So good.
Yeah, I'm really into asparagus at the moment too. And I guess because it's so seasonal, or rather if you treat it seasonally, as in, I will only eat British asparagus while it's here, and then that just makes it special just
Yeah.
because, well, you eat it now and then it will be gone until next year. So
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
another advantage of seasonal eating, that it really makes it special.
It does. Yeah, exactly. And especially with asparagus. I mean, for it was in the family coming from around Maastricht in the south of the Netherlands, which is very much an asparagus region, but it was really it would start at some time, in mid-April, end of or beginning of May, and then by the IJsheilige, I don't know what that term is in English, unfortunately, but it was a certain date where after that you just wouldn't get asparagus anymore. It was end of season done. So it's just this very narrow time frame of a few weeks where you eat as much asparagus as you can because the rest of the year you can't get any. So yeah, I love that. And that is what makes it special, right? I can already look forward to the fact that at some time, end of September, beginning October, we'll get Brussels sprouts again, and you can look forward to eating those for a number of weeks that they're completely in season. I love that. The seasons themselves bring so much variety and something to get excited about and looking forward to. So I love going with that flow of the time.
Yeah, and it also kind of forces you to be creative because you just
Yeah.
mentioned Brussels sprouts, and I used to hate Brussels sprouts because my mum, who is German, would sort of just boil them,
Mm.
and oh gosh, and then years later when I was living in London and I was having a veg box, so I couldn't choose whether I would get Brussels sprouts or not.
Mm.
Inevitably, then the Brussels sprouts would arrive, and then I had to, do some research. Okay, how can I make them taste nice? And I came across this. I think it was Nigel Slater who said that brassicas, not just sprouts, but all the cabbage family,
Mm.
hate water and love fat. Just
Yes,
never
yeah.
boil them. And that little line, reading that, it kind of completely transformed
Yeah.
my relationship to cabbage in general and to Brussels sprouts. And if you roast Brussels sprouts
Yes.
with
Oh,
olive oil or with butter and spices, it's just amazing.
it
And
is
and I
amazing.
had no idea until I tried that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's also what I love about, cooking, that it is this constant conversation we're having, right? You're picking up ideas from people who have been cooking, who have the experience, and they share with you a way to make your Brussels sprouts taste even better than they are. And that's what I also love about cooking, that it's this you're constant. I do look in recipe books, but it's always just to get the idea of what can I do with this one ingredient, or kind of this dish to get that special taste or texture that I'm after. I'm not looking at it for exactly all the steps and all the ingredients, but just the essence of, okay, yes, I need some fats to make the brassicas taste better than water does. And that's what I love about the conversation that we have around cooking, whether you're getting it from a recipe or actually talking to your mom or your neighbor, or as we are now, just getting all these ideas is wonderful.
Yeah, I love that view of cooking as an ongoing conversation. That is a
Yeah,
great image. Because yeah, of course, cooking is also something that is handed down
yeah,
through family, through culture, through your surroundings, well, like everything else. And and this is why I guess cooking is so often, you know, the metaphor of cooking for something else is cropping up in so many different
yeah.
situations. I remember when back in my 20s when I was, getting a degree in the kind of weird subject of ethnomusicology. And I was doing my master's thesis and I was in Greece interviewing musicians.
Mm.
And there was this one musician who our whole conversation, he was, you just reminded me of this now. This whole conversation, he was comparing how you write a song with how you
Mm.
cook a dish, and how, as a
Yeah.
musician, you use all these different influences and ingredients to kind of cook up something delicious. And I remember I loved this interview so much. And it comes up in many other, you read newsletters and articles, and cooking always makes for such a good
Yeah.
image, comparing it to life, actually.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I love also how just cooking itself, the activity of it, or certain dishes, they just bring up so many memories for us. And, I hope for most of us good memories, of course, but for me certainly many, many good memories. And has a lot to do with living abroad. We used to go back home every now and then, especially in the summer holidays or around Christmas. And then the way to connect with family was always, oh, we go to for coffee to aunt's place, and then we sat down for coffee, and she would have baked a cake with regional fruits, or so there's always this element of food coming through in all these memories and connections with back home. So lovely.
Yeah, memorable meals are always really not just about the food. Memorable
No.
meals are always about the context and the people and the occasion
Yes.
as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's I love that. Yeah. And sometimes it is, of course, very much a certain taste that you get for the first time, and you memorize that. But yeah, for me, I'd say it's more about the connection, always the social context in which I've the food or the dinner or the coffee or the lunch. So nice.
So, what are your favorite kitchen hacks? Things that make
Mm.
cooking easy for you? I mean, you already mentioned your soup maker, but maybe you have a
Yeah.
few more tips.
What else do I like? I have this little onion chopper. It's this little thing where you put the smaller pieces of an onion in, and you can kind of turn it, and there are these little knives going around in it, so it gets the onion very, very finely chopped. And I love that just because I don't have the patience, I think, to chop my onion so finely. So just being able to use this little thing really is wonderful to get onion very finely chopped, and I just love that. Sometimes I don't mind if my onion is a bit chunky, but sometimes to get it so finely, and it kind of somehow keeps a lot more of the moisture maybe in the onions. Although that makes no sense as I'm saying it, but I have that feeling that it comes more moisture comes out or something. I just love that. So my little onion cutter, as I call it, is definitely something I love. And and for the rest, I think as hacks, you gave me one a little while back with herbs because I love using herbs. But the thing with them is that I buy them, and after 5 days, 4 days, they really start to wilt, and they're not as fresh and nice anymore. and you said, put them through your butter to keep it nicely. And that has been amazing. I've been using it ever since I heard it from you. And it's amazing how much longer I can use my herbs in that way. And the butter can be used, I've used it on bread as a nice spread, but I've also used it through my soup to kind of finish it off. I've used it to with a steak to put a little knob on afterwards, and the herbs just melt away on top of the steak. It's perfect tip. I'm so happy with that.
That's great.
Really good.
Yeah, and we already talked about the tray bakes and the soups.
Yeah, yeah. Also really nice. And just having lots of fresh things in your fridge, or not lots, but just having fresh things in the fridge is, I think, always good. If you have vegetables, if you have fruit, if you have lemons, there's always something you can do with that. And for me, having the fresh things in my fridge is usually where I start in the morning. If I'm not really quite clear on what I want to cook, I'll open my fridge and have a look. What do we have there? And that's kind of the start of, oh, I have a piece of fish, or I have courgette. And then from there I start thinking, what do I want to do with that? What do I feel like today? So I always make sure I never plan meals in advance, but I make sure I have enough fresh things in my fridge that I know for 2, 3 days I have enough to get something prepared for dinner with that.
Yeah, I think I tend to do the same, to sort of think my meals around the fresh things, because obviously also the
Yeah.
fresh things need to be used up. And then I always have the kind of the pantry staples in the
Yeah.
background, the tin of tomato and tin of chickpeas, and all the
Yes.
different flavorings. And then if you got that and you just go along with your fresh things,
Yeah.
whatever you have or needs to be used, then that makes it really easy.
Yeah, it does. It really makes it easy. Yeah, and a good pantry is really important to have, that you have the bases of what you always kind of use. It's the fresh things that get my brain excited, like, oh yes, we're having this, and then I start pulling things from the pantry that I need to accompany it or to make it nice. That's why I also just love, organizing my kitchen. Not that it's very organized, but just to every now and then go through my pantry, see what we have there, and, make sure everything's up to date and fresh, and just make sure I have, the chickpeas in the cupboard, and the lentils and rice, just for whenever you need it, you can take it and use it.
Yeah,
Pantry is
that's
always good.
the great thing about having those basics around, because yes, adding the fresh stuff is great, but actually you can easily make meals
Yeah,
without the fresh stuff if you are stuck, so that you
yeah,
don't have to do that last minute panic to the shops. And obviously not everybody, other people live a lot further away from shops, but still, to go to the shop you actually need to get in the car. So just having those things in the cupboard is really kind of saving the day. So
yeah.
you just don't have to worry about the fact that there won't be dinner, because there is always something.
There's always something. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, which reminds me also that, when we're having a really busy day and the kids are coming home from sports late and I don't have much in my fridge, one of my other go-tos is just a pasta, where I boil pasta and I make a white sauce, very plain white sauce with flour and butter and milk. And then I add herbs, any herbs I still have, to that sauce, or some cheese. And just that, I mean, it's a very, very simple meal. But when the kids are hungry and have been doing their sports, just that pasta with that plain white sauce with something extra to it. It doesn't have to be a whole vegetable, a range of vegetables, but just some simple herbs. For instance, the wild garlic as of late. It's so tasty, and it's simple, and everybody is happy to go to bed with a full tummy afterwards. It's just that kind of stuff which makes life so easy.
Yeah, that is really a good point. And I think you made that point earlier with the soup as well. And I think, that's causing a lot of stress, this idea of thinking, oh my God, my kids are hungry. They need, something to eat right now. But rather than trying to rush the dinner, you either simplify the dinner or you have something, you will have some soup now and we'll,
Yeah,
have dinner in half an hour. That,
yeah,
that, that is actually a great tip so that you don't get into sort of stress mode about
yeah.
the cooking, which I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, and that is tricky when kids are hungry and they start asking for, chips or sweets because they are hungry. I think, a lot of children they don't start out necessarily wanting those things, but they're just hungry and it's often available because it's in a pack and easy to give. But that's why I find if you prepare a little bit with a soup or just some vegetable sticks cut up, I often do that around my lunchtime. If I'm preparing a salad for myself, I often chop up a capsicum or some cucumber, and I keep that in a little Tupperware for the kids when they get home, just to be able to offer them something like here you go, you fill yourself up with this, and then just buys me a little bit of time to get dinner started. That's just easy.
Yeah. And, whatever you're normalize in your family, in your kitchen, that
Yeah,
becomes the habit. So, have some soup or have some veggie sticks. And I remember, in my family, dessert used to be my mum would just get out some apples and some pears and
yeah,
start cutting them up for everybody.
yeah,
And that was, okay, let's get some fruit out for dessert. And,
yeah,
to this day, that is my concept of dessert.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely. I remember my grandma used to do that all the time. Also, if there was nothing necessarily prepared for dessert, then it was just fruit or a fruit salad was a full dessert for us. And it is so lovely when you have fresh fruit. The sweetness of it is just exactly what you often still would like after a meal, right? So good.
Which brings us full circle to keeping things simple and enjoying the simple
Yeah,
pleasures in life.
definitely. Especially keep things simple. I mean, life can sometimes be hard enough figuring things out. Let's make cooking as simple as it can and as tasty as can. Just enjoy it. It should be something to enjoy, not a stress, I think.
Yeah, I can only agree. Well, that's a nice final point to make in this conversation. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Caroline. That's been great talking to you about food and everything around that and the connection we get from food. So thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of At Home with the Intuitive Cook. Check out the show notes for links and tasty morsels. And remember, fresh episodes are served up every other Friday. Subscribe to stay tuned and keep exploring the joys of everyday cooking. Until next time, stay curious, trust your taste, and don't forget, it's not rocket science, it's just dinner.